Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mark Lynn with Healthcare Business Specialists in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and this is the cost reporting for Rural Health Clinics webinar on January the 19th, 2023. Here is our team. Here, each one of us is here, and each one of us will have a section today on preparing the cost report. So we are in the process of me working towards retirement, and we've got a great team that's going to be taking my place. Danny is purchasing the business, and it will live on after I'm sitting on the beach drinking mimosas or whatever you drink when you're on the beach. So this is our team. Each one of us will be talking today about a certain subject. Here are the services that we provide. We do 200 and what was that number? 281 cost reports every year. So very busy this time of year preparing Medicare RHC cost reports, program evaluations. Every 2 years you're required to do one of those, and if you need that service, we've got several registered nurses that will send out on site and do mock inspections for you, and then we'll write up the report and have a webinar with you going over the findings, and that will qualify, and then write a nice report that will qualify for your biennial program evaluation. That is a condition of certification as an RHC. If you guys want to become a rural health clinic and you're not one yet, we pretty much know that process very well. If you have issues on emergency preparedness, Paige has been working a lot on that, and so Paige and I will help you with that. And of course, if you're in Tennessee, if you need that TennCare quarterly report, then Danny does a lot of those. So that's the services that we provide. If you're not a member of our Rural Health Clinic Information Exchange group, we have 4,000 members, and it's a great place to find out all the information about RHCs, to ask questions, to find out where seminars are or webinars. Any type of information, you're welcome to post that. This information is current as of today, January 19th to 2023, and this is being recorded for future listening. For those folks that cannot be here, you can listen to it. They can listen to it later. If you do have questions, submit those into the question box there, and Danny will get those and ask us. We'll tend to stop after each section and see and address any questions that are in there. The slides the handouts are over on the side where it says handouts. The presentation is there. The presentation is on our website at ruralhealthclinic.com, and I put it in the Facebook page as well, the Facebook group as well. So it's in 3 different places. The handout itself, we have 90 slides. It may not download from here. So if you're clicking on here, trying to download it from GoToWebinar, whenever I put a big presentation on there, it tends to not work. So if you have issues getting it there, you can get it in those other places if you want it immediately. If you do have questions, every 2 weeks, the National Association of Rural Health Clinics has a virtual office hours for 1 hour. And Nathan Baugh, Sarah Holman, Mo Sullivan, they're there. I'm typically there, and Shannon Chambers is there to answer your questions about rural health clinics. So if you're running into any cost reporting issues, just tune into this every other week, and there is an opportunity for you to ask questions and get great information from the National Association of Rural Health Clinics every 2 weeks. Our whole team is typically on that session, so if I'm not there, Danny will be able to answer your questions as well in that. So that's a really great resource that I'm not sure if a lot of folks really know that that's available to you. Here is our website where we've actually posted the information for today's session, and has a lot of links as far as cost reporting goes. Here's the agenda. I'm going to do a quick, if it's quick for me, I tend to talk a little bit too much, cost report overview, and then Danny Gilbert will be doing talking about IDM and electronic filing of cost reports. Paige Chambers will be talking about Canopy and how you can upload information to us as far as your information for preparing the cost report. And then Trent Jackson will be talking about the money that you're leaving on the table for Medicare bad debts, and then I will come in and fill up the rest of our time. It will probably take the full hour with the information that I have at the very end. So that will be sort of the game plan for today. And the game has changed dramatically. We used to be playing checkers back when the maximum rate for rural health for the R8C was $85, $86 from Medicare. Now that maximum rate is $126. So cost reports are much, much more important than they were before. These slides I'm going to go through relatively quickly because I think most of you guys have seen that, but I just want to sort of emphasize that cost reporting, the money has changed dramatically from what it used to be as far as money that you can actually receive and money that you have to pay back. So that's because these caps are going up dramatically. And what happened was some of the MACs were setting the rates at 113 this year, and the cost per visits were not coming up to that level. And we ended up having paybacks to a lot of our clients. I know we had some of the paybacks were in the $400,000 range. We had two clients that both of them had to pay back $400,000 to Medicare because the rates were set at this national statutory cap. And the MAC came in and figured out, oh, their cost per visit was only $100. They wanted $13 back per visit, and these clinics had a lot of visits. So you can see these upper payment limits, they call it the national statutory payment limits, are going to increase dramatically over the next few years. And eventually you're not going to get these caps. As a rural health clinic, you're not going to be able to fund $190 a visit if you're an independent R8C, that's the audience that we're pretty much talking to today as far as us preparing cost reports. We only prepare independent R8C cost reports, and having a cost per visit of $190 is not sustainable. The reason why, I did a quick projection that shows you why you're not going to be able to get $190 a visit. Most of the R8Cs we see, they have a payer mix of about 20% original Medicare. Only original Medicare pays you these higher rates. Your Medicare Advantage plans, for the most part, they're just like commercial insurance, and they pay you what they're going to pay you. They don't have to follow these higher payment rules that you get from original Medicare for R8Cs. Medicaid goes by states, and so in our example here, we're using $130 is how much we're getting paid per visit. That can be all over the place. If you're Georgia, it's going to be horribly low. If you're in East Tennessee, it's going to be really attractive. So depending on what state you're in is how much you get paid from Medicaid. And then of course, commercial typically averages around $110, $115 a visit. So in 2022, we're going to be able to fund that mainly on the backs of Medicaid paying us a higher rate, and we're going to break even if our cost per visit is $113 a visit. Remember, your cost per visit is you take your total expenses by your total visits, which includes Medicare Part A, Medicare Advantage, Medicaid, commercial, self-pay, all those visits, total expenses by total visits. That gives you your cost per visit. And where we run into a problem, let's go into 2028, and we have the same payer mix that we did before. Our payments from Medicare are now $190. We've actually had to spend $190 a visit to get that. But our Medicare Advantage hasn't grown by that quickly. It's only gone up to $125. Our Medicaid has gone from $130 to $145, and our commercial has gone up to $120. Basically, we're not able to fund $190 per visit without losing $472,000. I don't know how many rural clinics can afford to be sinking $500,000 into their clinic every year to keep the rate up that high. That doesn't sound like something that's going to last very long to me. That's not survivable. So that's sort of the game that we're playing. That's why this game is much more important than it was before. If you do not file this cost report, Medicare is going to ask for every single penny they paid you during the year. That's why that's important. Also, your Medicare and Medicaid rates are based upon these cost reports. So we have to be very careful to try to capture every expense we can on them. But you're also going to get additional money for flu, pneumococcal, COVID vaccines, and then MABs, monoclonal antibodies. You're going to get those. Of course, your bad debts. And there's a piece in there for some preventive copays and deductibles. It's sort of buried into the cost report. One thing that when we're doing the cost reports, the goal is always to have your cost per visit that we show in that cost report to be higher than the next year's cap. That's going to be hard this year because this year's cap for 2022 is 126, and next year's cap is 130, or the next year's cap is 139. So we are really going to have a hard time getting to 139. But that's going to be the goal, is to get our cost per visit above 139. And of course, you guys are responsible for filing accurate cost reports. We don't sign those cost reports. They're actually, technically, they're signed electronically now, but we're charged with educating you on how to optimize your reimbursement so that you're following the guidelines and that they're acceptable to Medicare and Medicaid, but that you do get the optimal amount that you should get. Not too much, not too little, but exactly like what you did. And this hasn't come out yet. I probably should not have posted it in here, but it's posted. This is from the National Association of Rural Clinics, their winter 2023 newsletter. I thought it would be posted by now, but I just checked and it's not out there yet. But this is just showing what happened to most of you guys in December when Medicare asked for a bunch of money back from you guys. This goes through the calculation of how they came up with that and why you had to pay that money back. So I'm not going to go through it. Wait and read it when the NARHC newsletter comes out. It should come out today, but it'll probably come out tomorrow. But read it on there, and if it's telling you had to pay back money, notify whoever prepares your cost report about this, because we have to put that on C-1 of the cost report, and that will, if you got money back, that's going to lower your settlement that you get from Medicare. If you had to pay money, that's going to increase your settlement that you get from Medicare on the cost report. So it's going to be extremely important, especially if you had to pay back $400,000. Believe me, we're going to put that on there because that's going to show a payment to Medicare, and that's going to increase your receivable from Medicare. So extremely important that you do that. And then again, here's what Medicare settles for you on the cost report. So I think I had that in one of the slides there. For you guys that are 12/31 year-end cost reports, those will be due May 31st. There's no extensions anymore. We had a couple of those during COVID. That's not going to happen anymore. So if you're 12/31/22, we do need you to get your information in as soon as possible. Especially this year, we've got new people here. We've got a lot of cost reports to work on. Danny is having a baby about the time. I don't know. Danny, when is the baby boy due? Is it during May 31st? Or
it's April 30th.
April 30th. So April 30th, Danny is having a little boy. So she's going to be on maternity leave for a good portion of May. So we need to get those in as soon as possible so that we don't disturb Danny's maternity leave. If you haven't got your cost report agreement from us yet, let us know and we'll get those out to you. I think I saw the schedule and it looked like we got most of them out. There might be a few that didn't quite get out yet. And then make sure you sign those, get those back to, especially your HIPAA agreement as well. We do try to keep all of your stuff private. We have this Canopy website that Danny's going to talk to you about how to upload information to us. We shred everything. Especially me, I love paper, so I tend to go to Office Depot a lot and shred lots of things. So here are the steps to file the cost report. Get the agreement retainer going. We will send you a checklist, which I have put the checklist into the handouts over here. We have one checklist. It's 3 pages. It's a summary, and then we have one that's 26 pages. I think it's 23 or 26 pages that has all of the supporting documentation and work papers that you guys can help fill out for us to prepare the cost report. Get your PSNR report, and Danny will talk to you about how to get that using the IDM system. And then we want you to upload everything into Canopy. That is the best way to do that. And then email us, let us know that it's in Canopy, and that way we'll know to start working on it whenever it gets in there. We want to file your cost reports electronically. That way you can get your settlements quicker. You'll get your NPR, which is notice of program reimbursement. That's sort of how Medicare finalizes your cost report for you. So that way you can get your money quicker and get your desk review, which is that NPR, done much faster. Okay, Danny, I'm going to turn it over to you on this piece here about IDM.
All right, sounds good. As Mark mentioned, I'm going to go over the basics of the Identity Management System, or IDM. IDM is established enterprise-wide identity management solution. The goal of this system was so that all end users of the applications that integrate with the solution can use a single set of credentials to access each application. As we know, CMS has logins for 50 different websites, and they're all different. So this kind of helps hone in to where you only have to use one set of credentials. IDM governs access to CMS systems by managing the creation of the user IDs and passwords. You set up multi-factor authentication, and then you can assign roles within CMS applications to those individuals who have an IDM account. CMS does have a user guide for the IDM system. It's 79 pages long. If you want some bedtime reading, I'm more than happy to email it to you. But I've tried to condense the guide down into 13 slides. So I'm not going to get to cover everything, but I will touch on all the topics that are most relevant for cost reporting. Okay, Mark, next. Here are the objectives that I'm going to cover during the portion of the webinar: how to create a new user account, the IDM self-service dashboard, how to request a role for a new application, how to add attributes to an existing role, and how to view and cancel role requests. Next. Before we begin, there are a couple questions that you're going to want to answer internally within your organization. The first being, is there someone within your clinic who already has access to the IDM? If you're unsure about if your clinic has been set up already, feel free to reach out to me and I can help you find that out. I can actually go in and act like I'm going to request a role, and if your clinic pops up, we know somebody's got access, but if it's not there, then we'll just have to start from scratch, and I can walk you through that. If your clinic's already set up within the IDM system, it's probably best and easier to get with that individual since the account is tied to individual persons. If your clinic's not set up, I highly recommend the owner being the individual that sets it up, just because the user credentials are linked to an individual person and it uses his or her personal information. So for that reason, it's usually best to give that access to someone who's going to be with the clinic long term. Obviously, the owner's not going anywhere unless they sell. But we've had an instance here lately where office manager was set up. That office manager left, and now it's taken time. It's been really hard to get that person off of it and get the new person on. So just keep that in mind. The first topic we're going to cover will be how to create a new user account. Obviously, if your clinic already has access, this topic's irrelevant unless you want to add another user, such as an office manager. So if the owner has an account, but you want to add the office manager to have their own account, you can do that as well. The next 4 slides we're going to cover, we'll go over setting up your account and what information you'll need. And I've tried to include screenshots of the process so that you can make sure you're in the right place as you're going through and setting it up. At the top of the previous slide, Mark.
Oh, sorry, you said next.
Is the web address for the IDM system. If you do not have an account already set up, you're going to click that the red new user registration box. Next.
Okay, that was the next I need. Okay.
I think that other one was in my sentence.
Okay.
Once you click that button, the user registration window is going to pop up. And in that window, you're going to want to enter the personal information for the individual whose name will be associated with the account. After filling out all the details it asks for, you click that little blue box that to review the terms and conditions, and you agree to them, and then you click the next button and mark also next.
Okay.
Once you do that, it's going to ask for the user contact information. Remember, this is the information for that specific individual who you're setting the account up for. Once you do that, you'll click the green next button. The user account credentials information is where you're going to create your user ID and password. On the screen, you're also going to select a security question from the box and enter your answer, and then you'll submit that form and hit the return button. Once you do that, it takes you all the way back to that first sign-in page that we saw, where you can sign into your account. Once you start logging in, a window is going to pop up to do the multi-factor authentication as an additional layer of security. Email is automatically set up as the default, but once you're in, you can actually set up other factors such as your telephone number or whatever's going to be easier for you to do that multi-factor authentication. Next. Once you log in, here's a screenshot of the self-service dashboard. This provides access to functions that allow users to manage their user profile, request new applications, and manage roles for applications to which you've already been granted access. If you click the little IDM self-service home button at the top left of the page at any time, it's going to return you to this dashboard. The little person up at the top right, this one has a number 2 counter. That icon shows the number of pending requests that you have submitted or that need addressed. And then the drop-down menu, which is how you get the little arrow that's next to my name in the screenshot, will display the user's identity and provide access to the logout function. So you can go through that to log out of your IDM account when you're done. Next. The next topic we're going to cover will be how to request a role for a new application. More specifically, in our situation, it's getting set up with access to the PSNR STAR system. This system accumulates statistical and reimbursement data, which is summarized in various reports that are used by providers and cost report preparers to prepare the Medicare cost reports. So this application is where we would go to pull your PSNR to see how many Medicare claims you were billed out, because that gets reported on worksheet C of the cost report. MACs also use the PSNR report when they're doing their review to see if any claims have been billed and paid between the time that we prepared the report and the time that they're settling it out. To request access to this application, you'll want to click the role request button that was on the self-service dashboard, and then you'll follow the instructions on this slide to select the correct application. There will be a little drop-down menu, and you'll want to select PSNR/STAR, and you can kind of see I had already selected that in the screenshot. And if you don't see that application in the listing, that means you already have access set up. Once you've set up access with that application, the application no longer shows in the drop-down menu for you to select it again. Everything is going to auto-populate as you progress through the setup. So once you select that PSNR/STAR application, the select a role drop-down menu will appear. You're going to want to choose PSNR Security Official or the PSNR User role. Each clinic is only allowed to have one security official, and I usually recommend this being the owner, someone who's going to be with the clinic long-term. If you're office manager and are wanting to set up access for yourself and the owner already has an account, then you'll just want to select the PSNR User role. And once you select that role, the remote identity proofing terms and conditions will appear. Excuse me. Next. Remote identity proofing is the process that is used to confirm that individual's person identity. When I said this is related to just one individual person, this is where you go through the process of confirming your identity. There's 3 different types of verification. Online proofing, which uses Experian's computer-based verification service. The second type is phone proofing, which uses their telephone-based verification service. And then lastly is manual proofing, which is a proofing procedure that's performed by a help desk individual. The way that it works is they start out with online proofing, and if they can't verify your identity that way, they move on to phone proofing and then manual proofing. It just depends on how easy it is to verify. I will say the majority of time online proofing works. They usually will give you things associated with your credit, like you just had a loan from, and it gives you 4 options and you have to pick which option you just got a loan through, or you moved and you just bought a house, or it's very personal. So usually you can get it approved that way. Once that's been completed, the attributes menu will be shown so that you can select the required attributes from the menu for your role request. You're going to review the information you enter and make sure to add a justification for the request. I usually put cost report preparation or something along those lines for my justification. Okay, next. Next topic, and I apologize, I'm going through this fast. We only have so much time, so if I lose you, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll be happy to walk you through it one-on-one. We've got teams now where I've actually screen shared with a couple clinics of ours and actually been able to walk them through this process, and it's worked great. So this next topic we're going to cover will be how to add attributes to an existing role. To view your roles, you'll want to click the Manage My Roles button that was on the IDM self-service dashboard at the very beginning. And once you click that, it's going to show you this little top section that says Manage My Roles. And as you can see on this screenshot, I have 2. I have PSNR user and then MCREF authorized cost report filer. The View Details button will show you all your approved roles and the details of each of those. If you're the security official, this is where you'll also have access to add additional attributes to an existing role. Once you select on a role, and that's kind of what the second screenshot shows you, you'll be able to see all of the details. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there'll be a button that says Modify Roles. Next. Once you select that button, you'll be able to modify roles for your clinic. This is a place that you'll also be able to add additional CCN numbers if you have more than one clinic who share the same tax ID. I know we have a handful of clients who have multiple CCN numbers. So you're going to want to make sure that you've included all of those in the attribute section, or else you won't have access to pull the PSNR report for each clinic. You'll also have to put in a justification statement again as you're doing the modifications. Again, I would just put cost report preparation or adding additional locations, something along those lines, and then submit your changes. Okay. And then the last topic is how to review and cancel role requests. To view your request, you'll click the My Request button that was on the dashboard. And then this view will show you all of your pending requests, which is the screenshot that's up at the top of this slide. And this shows the requests that are currently outstanding for my account. If you're the PSNR security official, you'll also see any requests that are pending your approval in this section. I'm not a security official, so I don't have that option. There'll be different action icons on the far right. You can kind of see them. They're blue and red on the screen. That is so you can view details, cancel request, or approve request. And I don't have approve request because that's only for the security official, but there'll be a third icon if you are the security official where you can go and approve any request that you have. If you click the blue view details icon, it brings up all of the details of the clinic and the request that you submitted. And that's what this second screenshot is. You can also cancel your request from this view as well. Once your account's set up, you'll want to consider adding your cost report preparer. It's best to add them both as a PSNR user so they can pull that, and as the MCREF authorized cost report filer. So 2 different roles, because one will pull the PSNR, one will allow you to electronically file, which, as Mark mentioned, is super streamlined. It processes a lot faster. If you notify your cost report preparer that your account's been set up, we can actually go in and log into our account, and then we'll send the request from our end. And once we do that, the security official gets an email notification, and then it will show in the My Request section of their account so that they can approve it or deny it. And it'll show who we are, the justification that we put in it, all of those things. All right, Mark. That's it. And I know that's a lot of information thrown at you, and I kind of went through it fast. But if you have any questions or need assistance, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to send you screenshots. Like I said, we can set up a time to screen share, and I can walk you through that way. just let me know if you need help.
Yeah. Thank you, Danny. And I guess, yeah, I do want to emphasize what an advantage it is to use MCREF and to electronically file these cost reports, because we don't have to send you a ton of paper. You don't have to sign it. You don't have to put the cover letters on and mail it or FedEx it at the last minute. What happens is it gets electronically filed. We know immediately if they've accepted it or not, and they pretty much will get their NPR within a couple of days, and you'll get your settlements much quicker. Is that the big advantages to using this, Danny, or is there more that I'm missing?
No, that's correct. I probably wouldn't say a couple days.
Okay, we've had a few that were a couple days, probably.
They were very few, but they were like ones that were late. So I guess the Macs didn't have as much on their plates. But the majority of time, it's final settled. I'm looking at some now within 2 months.
Okay, so
the majority of them, yeah, which is a lot faster than if you paper mail them.
Yeah, it's much quicker and less chance of them getting lost. I know every year when we file as many cost reports as we do, there's usually about 2 that get lost somewhere, because these Macs are just big, huge insurance companies. They're Blue Cross and Blue Shields of whatever state they're in, and they're huge. And they have these mail rooms, and you're seeing those mail rooms, and sometimes those things end up in the wrong place, or they lose the USB drive that we send them, and we basically have to go back and resend everything. But what happens is, in the meantime, your money is cut off because they don't have the cost report, they lost it, and it becomes a big hassle. So, okay, so and then so we don't lose things coming to us. We're not a big insurance company, but the best way is to use Canopy. And so Paige Chambers will be telling you about how to use Canopy and send your files to us securely, so that we don't have them all over the internet and all over the mail and the fax machines and all that. So Paige, if you'll go ahead, that'll be great.
Yeah, Mark, just go to the next slide.
Okay.
So here, this is your secure login. Of course, this is my email, but that's kind of what it looks like when you go to sign in. And like Mark said, Canopy is a platform that we use, especially if you're sending anything HIPAA related, anything that's got patient information on it, anything that's got payroll information on it, not necessarily, HIPAA, but you don't want out there for everybody to see. Use Canopy. Whenever we onboard new clinics, we go ahead and make you a Canopy site or whatever for use. And so everybody has a username and password to access Canopy. And when we onboard clients, like I said, we set up this portal and we use what emails we have on file. But that doesn't mean, if you change office managers or you had turnover or something like that, we can definitely update who can access the portal. So just let me know, me, Danny, or Mark. Just send us an email. Let us know, we need to take this person off, add this person on. It's a really simple process. And then, we go in, add your email, and then it sends you a invitation link. I didn't have any of those to show a screenshot of, but it just sends you a link from Canopy, and it directs you to set up, with your email and your password. And then once you have your username or password, this is what it looks like when you log in. So Mark, you can go to the next slide. So I thought I would just show kind of uploading documents to Canopy. So, you log in and then it shows, this is just a example. This is our business page. So this is kind of what it looks like. You can drag files over to where it says add files, or you can, where I have it highlighted, upload, click there and you can upload single files. If you want to upload say you have a zip file or something with all the information that we need on it. Mark, if you go to the next slide. You can also upload a file instead of just individual files. So, if you send us 10 or 15 things, you don't want to do it that way. If you just want to create a folder and upload, so you go to the 3 little dots and then you hit upload a folder, or you could drag it over from your desktop and then and then that whole folder will be there for us to see. And probably the best way, it does send us an email when you guys upload folders or files to Canopy. But if you're uploading stuff and it's done, you're ready for us to look at the cost report, go ahead and send us an email and say, hey, I'm from this clinic, I've uploaded your files, just so it doesn't get lost. Because like Mark said, we are doing 281 of these. So we have emails coming in all the time. So that's a good way to make sure that we are notified. Canopy notifies us, but no technology is perfect. So that's just a double check. And then Mark, you can go to the next slide. And then this is kind of what it looks like with folders. So most people, if you've been our client for a while, we go in and organize them by like the cost report year or TennCare report year. So you'll see folders with that. You don't have to worry about organizing that. We do that. I just wanted to show, that's kind of what it looks like. Mark, you can go to the next slide. And then not sure if you have Canopy access. So here is the link to log in. Log in, go check that your password, your password, and that you've had this access created. And if you haven't, just shoot me an email and I can work on that for you. It'll give you an opportunity to do forgot password. And you can do that. Or if you guys have never logged in at all, just let me know and I can check into that for you. Just email me sooner rather than later so I can check in on that. So that way you have it, your access, so you can upload your files or cost reports. And then next slide. And then this is my information. Again, shoot me an email, give me a call, and we can work on your Canopy access if that's something that you don't have established already.
Okay. All right, Paige, thank you for that update on how to get your files to us. Again, that is the best way, the most secure way to get those to us and the most useful. And so now we're going to go into Medicare bad debts. So Trent Jackson is here to tell us about how to claim Medicare bad debts. So Trent, take it away.
Sure, Mark, absolutely. So we're going to take just a little bit of time here and talk about Medicare bad debts. And as we've kind of got the graphic on the screen, and Mark alluded to this earlier, Medicare bad debt is truly money on the table when you're talking about your cost report. It is a very important piece of the whole reimbursement picture. So if you can go ahead and go to the next slide, we'll jump into this. So just kind of a very brief summary and kind of introduction of what we're talking about, just to, in case you're not overly familiar with it. I'm sure many on the call are. So how Noridian defines it is a provider's bad debts resulting from Medicare deductible and coinsurance amounts that are uncollectible from Medicare beneficiaries. They would be considered in the program's calculation of reimbursement to the provider if they meet the criteria specified in what's listed there as 42 CFR 41389. And that is basically the definitional criteria for what constitutes a Medicare bad debt. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. I've got it broken down a little bit further there so we can look into what this looks like. So that first part of the criteria, the debt must be related to a covered service and derived from the deductible and coinsurance amounts. So when you're talking about Medicare bad debts, you are talking specifically about deductible and coinsurance. Those are the two aspects of it that you're listing. And when you put it on your bad debt log, there's actually two separate columns where you'll identify the amount that's related to deductible, the amount that's related to coinsurance, and then how that totals out. It's important to note this is not anything that's fee for service, no hospital, no technical components. This is specifically bad debts related to, for everyone in our case, RHC provided services. And this is also traditional Medicare only, no Medicare Advantage. The second part of the criteria here is establishing that reasonable collection efforts were made. And here in just a second, I'll deep dive a little bit further into that, talking about what constitutes a reasonable collection effort. But in general, has to include at least 120 days of collection. And the first bill has to be sent in a timely manner. There was kind of a whole thing a little while back where timely wasn't really clearly defined, and some of the different MACs were taking different definitions to it. But thankfully, CMS did come down with some clarifications to the Federal Register that define that very clearly as the first bill has to be sent within 120 days after the Medicare remittance advice or the remittance advice from the beneficiary's secondary payer if they have one, and that's whichever is latest. So that's plenty of time to get that first bill out, and you do want that first bill to go out as quickly as possible because there is what we'll talk about. There's that 120 days of collection. That clock has to start. First of all, in order to attempt to get paid by the patient, but also if you're not going to get, if it's not going to be collected, then once you hit that 120-day mark, you can put it on the bad debt log to claim with your cost report. And then we've also got listed 4 documented collection efforts. The important part there is documented. Any kind of collection efforts you're making in regards to this, keep very clear and good records about it, because you never know when, once the bad debt log is submitted, it's a very important thing that the MACs look at during their audit process, and it's entirely possible to for them to come back and ask for supporting documentation regarding any of the accounts. So you want to make sure that you have your documented collection efforts where you can access them. The third part of the criteria is the debt is actually uncollectible when it's claimed as worthless. Where I think about this, the important thing to remember here is that you are writing off and ceasing collection efforts during the period that you're claiming that the report is for that you're claiming on. So if collection efforts cease in March of 2022, and then you file your cost report for 2021, May of that year, it's not going to go on the 2021 report because you determined them worthless in 2022. So it would go on your 2022 cost report. So your log is based on when collection efforts ceased and you determine the bad debt to be worthless. And that fourth criteria is that sound business judgment indicates that there is little likelihood of recovery in the future. If you are going through your reasonable collection efforts appropriately, then this should also satisfy your fourth requirement. Because if you're doing reasonable collection efforts and not getting paid, then sound business judgment will indicate that there's little likelihood of recovery. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. This is just kind of some more definitional stuff. This is how the provider reimbursement manual defines bad debts. And it looks at it and says, bad debts, charity, and courtesy allowances are deductions from revenue. They're not to be included in allowable costs. This means that basically your bad debt should not be found on worksheet A of the cost report. And if it is there, of course, it has to be adjusted out. Your preparers will certainly handle that aspect of it, but that's just how, from an accounting perspective, we're supposed to look at bad debts. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So I mentioned we would dig a little bit deeper into reasonable collection efforts. These are some of the things that can constitute reasonable collection efforts. So it's going to include subsequent billings, telephone calls, collection letters. You can use a collection agency. You don't have to. You can use a collection agency, and that can be in lieu of or in addition to any other collection efforts you use. It's important to note, though, if you're using a collection agency, that any costs associated with that, while they are allowable expenses and can be included on the cost report, those costs are not bad debt. So if you're set up with your collection agency that they keep a percentage of whatever they collect, the full amount that they collect still has to be removed from any bad debts you're claiming, because it was collected from the patient, even if that cost was taken in by the or even if part of that was taken in by the collection agency as a cost to you. But like I said, you can include that in your regular expenses, and that would go on worksheet A of the cost report. And of course, as was previously mentioned, reasonable collection efforts as a whole must continue for at least 120 days. And another important note there that I've got at the bottom: any payments that you receive, restart that clock. So anytime you get any payment, no matter really how small, it's going to reset that 120 days and it'll start over. We can go to the next slide. There are situations where reasonable collection efforts are unnecessary and you don't have to go through them. Two in particular, if you can determine indigency of the patient based on a provider policy, then you can skip reasonable collection efforts, and once that determination is made, that would be the date that you would include them on the bad debt log. There's, as you can see, I've got some kind of sub points associated with this because there's some hoops you have to jump through to make that happen. First of all, indigency has to be determined by the provider, not the patient. And it must consider a patient's total resources, and that's including assets, liabilities, income, expenses. Must also determine that there's no source other than the patient that would be legally responsible. And as with everything that we do, you have to maintain clear documentation about how this is determined. But if you can do all that and are keeping clean documents about it, then you don't have to go through the 120-day window, and you can go ahead and include any indigent patients on your bad debt log as soon as that determination is made. The other situation in which you don't have to go through RCE is if you have Medicaid patients, and this would be called what's referred to as crossover bad debt. So essentially, it has to be billed to Medicaid first. Medicaid will refuse to pay or may pay a portion of it, and then whatever's not paid by Medicaid, Medicare will reimburse at 65%. And I've got a little bit more about this on the next slide. So as I mentioned, this is often referred to as crossover. It's also called dual eligible bad debt. If you actually look at the cost report, I believe the line is labeled as dual eligible bad debt. And as I said, if Medicaid does not pay the complete coinsurance or deductible, the difference can be included on the bad debt log and Medicare will reimburse. Important note here, for any crossover bad debt, keep it on a separate file, because it has to be included on the cost report on a separate line. It's broken out from the total, and so it's easiest for us, and it's easiest for the auditors if we can see the specific crossover log that comes to that total. So go ahead and go to the next slide. We're getting close to wrapping up on our bad debt section here. I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but want to make sure it's completely clear. Once an account is included on the Medicare bad debt log, collection efforts have to cease. You can't continue to try to collect on an account if you are pursuing reimbursement from Medicare for it. Medicare doesn't want you to be double dipping that and trying to get reimbursement both from the program and from the patient. So make sure your collection efforts are ceasing, and the date the collection efforts cease is the date that they care about as far as inclusion on the Medicare bad debt log. So we'll go to the next slide. So it's kind of summarizing what we've talked about. Medicare bad debt includes coinsurance and deductibles that's billed to the Part A MAC. It is only for RHC covered services. Nothing else is included in that. You have to meet reasonable collection efforts or be determined indigent or be a Medicaid crossover patient. Point number 6 here is very important. When you're talking about bad debt policies and you want to have a bad debt policy, you have to treat all your patients the same. You can't treat Medicare patients any different than you're treating commercial insurance or Medicaid patients just because you know that you have this 65% reimbursement as a backup plan. So it has to be a universal policy and treat everyone the same as far as what you're doing from a collection standpoint. So you can't have different policies there. You don't have to turn it over to a collection agency, but you certainly can if that meets your business plan. And you have to write it off and cease collection efforts in the year that you plan to include it on the cost report. And once again, collection efforts must cease before you can actually include it on the log. And we'll go to the next slide. when you're capturing your information and actually putting it on the log, use an Excel spreadsheet. The information gets very extensive a lot of times, and there's a lot of information that has to be included, potentially more in the future. We'll get to that in just a second. Definitely use an Excel spreadsheet. Mark likes to tell the story of one summer when I was working for HBS previously, when I took a handwritten Medicare bad debt log that we received and typed it up into Excel. Not the most fun time. So if you can put your logs in Excel to begin with, makes everyone's life a little bit easier. Definitely want to keep separate regular and crossover logs. That way it's just easiest that way, like I mentioned earlier, because it's reported separately on the cost report. You will be providing your spreadsheets to Medicare when you submit. If you're e-filing, if we're e-filing for you, then that will be submitted, of course, along with all the other documentation. So you can, once you provide that to your preparer, they will make sure that it's provided into Medicare with the submission. And start early. If you're not currently keeping track of bad debt, it's January. It's perfect time to start looking at your open accounts and seeing, you know, what you can cease collection efforts on for next year's report if you're past the point for doing it for 2022. So never too late to start. So go ahead and get started as early as possible if that's something that you're not currently looking into. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. There is one more thing to think about when talking about this capturing of information, and that's recoveries of bad debt, because recoveries do happen. So if you have already submitted, if you've already claimed for bad debt reimbursement on a previous cost report, and then someone pays their bill after you've already ceased the collection efforts, you've been reimbursed twice. So how do you deal with that? So if John Smith owed $100 and there was no payment for 4 months, you put it on your log, and then Medicare reimbursed you $65 because they reimbursed 65%. And then John Smith comes in later and pays off his $100 medical bill. What do you do with that? Well, it's fairly simple. All you have to do is on your current year log. You don't have to go back and open anything else from a prior year. You can go on your current year log and reduce the amount that you're claiming in the current year by the lesser of what you were paid either by Medicare or what you recovered at a later date. So in our hypothetical situation, John Smith paid off his entire bill of $100, but Medicare only previously reimbursed $65. So you only have to reduce your current year claims by that $65 amount. So that's how you handle that. It's important to be aware of that because that does happen sometimes. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. I believe, let's see this next slide. Yeah, this is the currently applicable Exhibit 2 bad debt log. And for all of the cost reports that are going to be submitted in the next few months here for 12/31/2022, all of them will be included using this Exhibit 2 log. And if you'll go ahead and go to the next slide so we can get a look at Exhibit 2A. There's probably not very many provider-based RHCs on the call, but if there are, definitely talk to your cost preparer about Exhibit 2A, because this was recently released by CMS as applicable to the CMS 255210 form, which is the hospital cost report. And so, of course, provider-based RHCs file their cost reports as a part of that report. So currently, there's no, at least I haven't seen any official word about how this may impact independent RHCs, but it's important for everyone to know that this is out there and could be applicable to you in the future. But as of right now, what we're submitting for this year everything is on Exhibit 2 still, which is the more condensed version. Exhibit 2A, as you can see, just has a lot more information on it, a lot more columns. None of the information on there is super out there, stuff that you wouldn't have, but it's obviously more data, so it's more to keep track of and more to complete. So just something to be aware of. And we'll go on to the next slide. Here are just some helpful links. You should have access to this, as Mark mentioned, the handouts in the sidebar or on the website, where you can get to the slideshow. You can follow these links if you need a sample bad debt policy, or if you need either a Medicare only or Medicare Medicaid crossover bad debt log to use for your own keeping track of. That is basically bad debt. I know I went through that very fast, so if there are any questions, I can certainly take a quick look at those. There's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me at any time, and I'll help you just as best I can.
Hey, Trent, we do have one question.
Sure.
It says, when dealing with the co-insurance part of the bad debt, do you have to bill that to the patient, or is it automatically bad debt?
Well, so everything has to be billed to the patient first, and then you either have to go through the reasonable collection efforts, or if they're indigent and you've established that, then it can go immediately to bad debt. Otherwise, you have to bill the patient, or if they're Medicaid, then you have to bill Medicaid and get that remittance advice back.
Okay.
But
And
in
then
general, everything has to go to the patient first.
Yeah. And then somebody else, excuse me, asked, Palmetto's the MAC, does the bad debt have to be reported with the quarterly credit reports that are submitted?
I'm not overly familiar with the quarterly report there, but bad debt's going on the cost report all the time, the annual cost report.
Yeah, Trent, you would not put that bad debt on the credit balance report that has to be filed every quarter. Is that right, Danny?
That's correct. Michelle, that's something totally different. So no, you wouldn't have to do that.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for Trent?
That is it for now.
Okay, well, we're doing, I knew it was going to do bad on time. I'm wondering if we'll go ahead and get it on paper here. I'll try to do this piece in 10 minutes or less, maybe, or 10 to 15 minutes. So we'll go over a little bit, but at least it'll be recorded for everybody. And this one I'll go through quick because we've gone through this before. There's 3 types of cost reports. If you have less than $50,000 worth of payments from Medicare, you are eligible to file a low utilization cost report, and that could come in handy with all of these rate increases, and maybe your rate's set at a high rate, but you're no longer going to have that much cost in there anymore. So there's some strategies that we can use to optimize your reimbursement. If you're a pediatric office and you don't want to fool with filing a cost report, you don't have to, because you have no Medicare utilization. So you'll want to look at these options there. I know we've had some clients that came over to us from other people that they were filing full cost reports. They were pediatric offices, and I was like, why are you doing that? That's costing you a ton of money to file a full cost report, and you can just do a no utilization. And then for low utilization, again, there are times when that can come in very handy, especially if you're brand new to the program and you have less than $50,000 worth of payments, and you don't have a lot of, maybe you got surveyed on September the 1st of the year and you got a 12/31 year in, and you really didn't have a whole lot of claims in there. There's no reason to file a full cost report in most cases. So this, if you're in a situation, talk to your cost report preparer and see what your options are, because a full cost report, you're gonna get the highest fees, but you're gonna get the most reimbursement from things like flu, pneumococcal, COVID, bad debt. You're going to get all of that. While if you do a low utilization, you're not going to get all of that, but it's going to be very simple. Your fees are going to be a lot lower, and you basically just submit a balance sheet and a profit loss statement to Medicare, and you're done with your reporting requirement for them. So those are just some some documentation of what I just told you. So we won't go through that now. The big difference is if you've given a lot of flu shots, pneumococcal and COVID, you're not going to get reimbursed those if you do a low utilization cost report. So, and you're not going to be able to claim Medicare bad debts as well. And you're not going to get that difference in your interim rate. So you sort of have to do a little bit, it's a math question of whether you should file a low utilization or a full utilization. And it's something you'll really need to talk over your cost report person if you have that option. Again, $50,000 in payments from Medicare is what we're looking for. That's from original Medicare. And do get those. If you think this is you, contact us or contact your cost report preparer very quickly, because we can get these done quick and get them out of your hair and be done with it. And then that way we'll have more time to do the full cost reports later on. Here is our checklist for this year. This is the 26-page thing that we have for you guys. Here's, I'm showing you the 3-pager information that we need. Trial balance of your expenses is the best thing. A CPT frequency report by provider for visits. If you're 1231, we would like to see your W-2s and then write down what each person does. If you're not a 1231, then don't send us your W-2s because they won't do any good, but send us a payroll journal for your period of time. We'll need to see your pneumococcal, influenza shot logs. You should have those because we will have to submit those to Medicare as a part of our cost report submission. Invoices where you paid for pneumococcal, influenza, those types of expenses, we need to have that as well because we have to figure out what your cost is. And Medicare pays you extremely well for that. Your PSNR report, that's the Medicare summary report. In order for us to accurately file your cost report, we're gonna need that particular document. If you don't get signed up with IDM and you can't, there's no way, and maybe you have the office manager that left and you can't get in, we can pull those for you, but we have to use sort of a little political capital to do that, and we don't like doing that. But if it's the last resort, then we can do some emails and talk to some people that will help us out and get those for you. But try to get set up in IDM first and try to get your MCREF set up. That's going to make things a lot easier, life easier for you and life easier for us as well. The Medicare bad debt listing that Trent talked about, remember you had to have this written off by the end of the fiscal year and stop collection efforts. So if you're just now starting on it, it's too late for a 1231 year end, but start now, like Trent said, so that you have it for next year. Related party transaction, if you employ your spouse or your children, we need to know that that's a related party transaction. If you rent the building from a separate LLC that you and your partner own, that is a related party transaction. And those are going to really impact your reimbursement starting in the future because those are basically disallowed, that related party transaction. If you charge $1 million in rent, we're going to disallow that $1 million in rent, and we're going to put back in your actual depreciation, your actual mortgage interest that you paid, your property taxes we'll put back in. But that difference is going to be disallowed on the cost report, and it's going to hurt your rate going forward because your caps, before it didn't hurt your rate because your cost per visit was well above that $85, $86 limit. Going forward, it's probably, you know, when the cap is 139, this transaction is going to actually lower your Medicare reimbursement. So we'll want to watch that. Some of these other things here, any type of Medicare correspondence that you have, especially NPR, especially interim settlements for this year, either you paid them back or they paid you, we have to report that on C-1. Otherwise, the cost report receivable is going to be incorrect. So we'll want to make sure you do that. Make sure we have the proper name of the person who's going to be signing the cost report. We have to put that in there. And when Danny or Trent or whoever's doing your MCREF, they'll put a little X in there. It's going to be the signature of that person who is responsible for this cost report. So those are And as far as counting visits, the best way is to get a CPT frequency report broken down by provider. We prefer to count them ourselves. It takes time, it takes skill. It is an art more than a science on counting visits because it is complex. So, but we want you to break it down by provider because the cost report, it has a place for physician visits, nurse practitioner visits, PA visits, LCSW visits, or CP visits on the cost report. And if you pay visits by contract, it has a place for contracted visits as well. So we need that sort of detail on visits to accurately compute the cost report. We actually want the number to be low. It's the denominator in this calculation I was showing you before. Cost, your total expenses by your denominator, which is your visits. The lower this number is, the better off we are. So we're not going to count 99211 visits because those are nurse only visits. And a lot of people want to put injections, lab procedures. They want to say, we had a procedure, we want to have 20, 30, 40,000 visits because we're going to get paid more from Medicare. No, that's going to crush your Medicare rate if you're trying to put that in as your total visit. So you don't want to do that. So here's the definition of a visit. It's a face-to-face encounter between a physician, nurse practitioner, certified nurse midwife, certified clinical psychologist, or a CSW. Right? The old term was LCSW, but a clinical social worker, where you have a face-to-face encounter, must be within the scope of practice and require the skill of that particular provider. What that means is you just can't have physicians going out and giving everybody flu shots and saying, well, that's a face-to-face encounter because I gave them a flu shot, I saw them. It was a medically necessary service, but it didn't require the skill of an MD to give a flu shot if that's the only service that you provide. That's not going to count as a face-to-face encounter and something you can put on the cost report as well. So that's the definition of a visit. Here is our cheat sheets. If you want to go in and tackle these and try to put these in the right spot, you're more than welcome to. We've put together a 7-page cheat sheet that sort of goes through. These are your face-to-face encounters, not telehealth visits here. And then here's all the different types of services where you could get a visit. And we tell you exactly what the cost report treatment is on here as well. These are for your telehealth visits. Notice that there's 2 different types of telehealth visits starting in 2022. If you have a mental health visit for Medicare that's done via telehealth, that is included on the cost report as an allowable expense, and it is included in your visit count. Same service, we have a telehealth visit, but it's not for mental health. It's for maybe you're diagnosing somebody with potentially having COVID. That is not a service that's eligible for the all-inclusive rate. That's, you'll actually get paid $98.27 in 2023. That is not an allowable expense, and it's not counted in your visit. So they make it pretty difficult to get these things exactly right. And so one of the problems is billing and coding is different. I've gone through this slide many times in the recent months, so we won't go over that, but we sort of have a little cheat sheet or crosswalk there. Here's your CPT coding, here is your HCPCS coding as well. And the key to this one is if you have Medicaid and Medicaid requires you to do a T1015, we have noticed that we've seen several cost reports come in where people are counting the 99213s and they're counting the T1015s, and you've just double counted every Medicaid visit. We just had a cost report that we just reopened to fix that problem. Cost that clinic, you know, 20, 30, 40, I don't know. It's a bunch of money, $1,000. It was a bunch of money by double counting the T1015. So you do not want to make that mistake, especially now. Probably in the past, it may not even have affected them because their cost per visit would have been below the cap. Not the case anymore. If you make this mistake, it's gonna hurt you. So you wanna watch that one. Physician time, you'll want to keep up with your physician, nurse practitioner, PA time, because you may have productivity standard issues. So that's why keeping up with their time is important. You'll want to keep up any type of provider that you have. You'll want to do some type of time study on them and keep up with their time that they're actually seeing patients. That's going to be extremely important. These are the productivity standards for a full-time physician who's working 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. It's 4,200 visits. That's about 17 visits a day that provider, that physician should be seeing. For your nurse practitioner and for your PAs, it is 2,100 visits per year for them. That's about, I mean, it's a relatively low number. It's about 9 visits per day. And so you see that there's some monthly productivity that people would need. Here's some of the documentation standards. Again, we're sort of running out of time, so I'm not going to go through that one. This is the actual time study. A Medicare official time study is each one of these providers for 1 week per month. Some of the MACs have clarified that we will accept from rural health clinics 1 per quarter. So I would do at least that minimum of 1 per quarter and do a time study like this where hopefully most of their time is seeing patients at the RHC, treating patients, face-to-face encounters, or if they're going to the nursing home, keep up with that time. If they're doing administrative time as well, being medical director, that's perfectly fine. CME, obviously we have to have a lot of CME for our physicians and nurse practitioners, so they provide us the best possible medicine. And then if they have non-RHC times that they're in the hospital, think about time where you're billing it to Medicare Part B, fee for service, or if you're getting a fee for service from Medicare, even if you bill it on the UB04, like the telehealth, the COVID patients that are on that have telehealth, that is a fee for service payment. Chronic care management, if they're spending in time with the chronic care management where you get paid basically $80 for every 20 minutes of time, that is a fee for service. And so we would be not counting those as allowable cost and not counting, if there were visits there, they would not count those as visits either. So that's going to be an important step that you do that. And then once we get this information from these quarterly, what we'll do is we'll put together this here for the name of the physicians and how many average hours that they work, and we'll get the FTEs. The lower the FTE on the cost report is, then the lower the productivity standard is, and that's going to be helpful to you. We want those productivity standards to be low as possible. COVID vaccines or flu shots, or discovering the COVID vaccines. In 2021, we included Advantage patients on the cost report. That changes in 2022, where now we only have original Medicare. This is the way it used to be, was only original Medicare was on the cost report. 2021 is the only year where we could put COVID or MABs on the cost report. That's different in 2022. So now you only put original or traditional Medicare on the cost report. So that's a big change from the previous year for your COVID patients. Remember, we do not put Medicare Advantage or replacement plans on there. And here's what your log should look like. Basically, very simple. Your name, MBI number, date of service. You only have to do this for Medicare. You only have to do it for pneumococcal, for influenza, for COVID, and for MABs, for if you still do, I don't even know if you can still do monoclonal antibodies anymore. I think the emergency use for that was pulled from last time I remember. So, and Medicare does pay you very well, about $250 per shot for your pneumococcal, depending on whether it's Prevnar 23, Prevnar 13, or the new one, Prevnar 20. All of those can go on there, and I'm not sure what the Prevnar 20 cost yet, but you will get paid very well for that. Influenza averages about $50 to $60 per shot, so you make out very well on that as well. Here's what your logs look like from our checklist. So we'll keep on moving. Their pneumococcal. Oh wow, and then that's everything. That wasn't too bad. As far as going over, any questions, comments? if you have a question, you want us to open up your line, we'll be glad to. Danny, any questions?
There are some that, there's about 3 that have came in, and I've answered them in the chat,
Okay.
but that way it applies to everybody. I'm going to ask you so everybody can hear. The patient, what if the patient is, and this is referring to the bad debts, what if the patient is deceased before reasonable collection efforts?
I don't know, Trent, what is the answer to that one? The patient is deceased
Sorry.
before reasonable collection efforts? I don't know. What do you think about that one?
Can I try?
Well, my first thought would be if there's like any estate or other responsible party has if that's been reached out to, and if either you can't find that or there's evidence of not being one, then I would assume you could include it on the log. I don't have a reg to back any of that up though, so I'm not sure.
I actually did put the regulations in the chat box, and you're right. You have a right, Trent. They do have to reach out to the responsible party.
Okay.
So
So you can still have, they're gonna try to collect the money after you're dead. That's what it amounts
Yeah.
to. So that's, in fact, I've had that situation where we had a doctor have a stroke and die, and that got Medicare wanted that cost report. So I ended up, he was not talking to me, so I ended up making up some numbers and submitting it for him, and we were good to go. But yes, okay. But then you get some more.
Yep. Do you need handwritten logs for vaccinations, or can we use reports from EHR?
You definitely don't want handwritten logs. You want to have those. You want to have an Excel spreadsheet for those, or if you have an EHR, like I know a lot of people use Azalea or Athena, any of those, they should have a way to create a log, and you can use those on the cost report.
Yep. And then a couple questions came in asking about Medicare Advantage vaccines. Should those be included?
They should not. Medicare Advantage no longer will go on any of these cost reports anymore.
And then you've got, just wanted to confirm, if we perform an E&M visit and an annual wellness visit on the same day, and you're only paid the qualifying visit or the E&M, we don't include the annual wellness visit count on the cost report. Is that
That's correct? Yeah, that's correct. Absolutely.
Can you get paid for waste on vaccines?
Get paid for waste on vaccine?
Probably, I think maybe what she's saying, or like if you have to discard, like if you don't give them out maybe, and you're having to trash them essentially because maybe they expire, is what I'm guessing that she means. Oh, and she said yes.
Yeah. What happens is, in reality, is you're going to give less shots on your in your log if you do that. So basically, your reimbursement per shot will go up, a few cents to cover that. So I think in theory, you probably will end up getting some sort of recovery from it, but there's no place you can put on there wasted shot. We want $60 for that. What would have happened was you'd waste that shot, and it would cause your cost per shot to be $60.25 versus $60. Does that make sense, Danny?
Yes.
Okay.
Don't all Medicare bad debts need to be written off to bad debts in the general ledger? So off the books, I think is what she's saying.
Yeah, like I say, the general ledger part sort of threw me there. I mean, you should have, and Trent, you can correct me if I'm wrong. You should have a patient accounting system to where you basically the Azalea or Athena, whatever it is, you have an account in your accounts receivable, and you need to write it off in that accounts receivable before the end of the year and cease your collection efforts for that patient. So
I think what she's getting at, same thing as like bad debt expense mark on your P&L is what she's getting at when she says general ledger. That's just basically what she's saying. Yeah,
and that is not, that bad debt, like I think Trent said that earlier too, is bad debt is not an allowable expense on the cost report. So you would remove that from the cost report. You can keep it in your general ledger, but whoever's preparing your cost report is going to not claim that as an expense that you get as part of that total cost divided by your total visits. That is not going to be a part of that calculation. Is that right, Trent?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
And then somebody asked if you're supposed to be charging the admin fee for vaccines.
No, because it goes on a log. You actually do get compensated for the admin piece of it. There's two different sections on that B-1 where it will actually take a percentage of your salaries of the people that did that. But on the cost, there's no place for you to bill that. You don't bill that. You just put them on that log.
Okay. And then Dave asked, never have I done the FTEs on that spreadsheet you shown. It was much more basic than that. Do we have to use that Excel spreadsheet? And I guess now, please not.
You don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to use. Doug gets special treatment. We'll take care of you. Let me just tell you, we'll take care of you. But you don't have to use it. And again, you don't have to use any of these forms that we have. That's just something to give you a starting point of what information that people are looking for. So yeah.
And somebody asked what an FTE was.
Full-time equivalent is what that is. So a full-time equivalent is you 2,080 hours per year of work. So, which I'm trying to avoid. So working 2,080 hours. At my age, we don't work 2,080 hours. Let me just tell you.
That's all I have, Mark.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you, Trent. Thank you, Paige. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you hanging with us for a little bit longer, but I'm glad we got this on tape. And if you need to go back and watch it later, you can do that. And y'all have a great day. We appreciate what you guys do. Remember, get your stuff in early because we're having a baby. So get in early. Thank you very much. Bye.